The Housemaid's Secret by Freida McFadden. Chapter by chapter book summary. Prologue. The narrator begins with a stark declaration that tonight will be the night of their murder. A violent storm rages outside a small cabin, with lightning flashes providing the only glimpses of the wooden floorboards where the narrator imagines their own lifeless body lying in a pool of blood. They reject this fate, resolving that it will not happen tonight. The electricity has been cut, an act the narrator knows is not the storm's doing but the work of someone who has already killed once and now intends to make them the next victim. This dire situation is connected back to a simple cleaning job, a stark contrast to the current reality where their blood may soon be mopped from this cabin floor. Using the lightning as a guide, the narrator moves cautiously toward the kitchen, hoping to find a weapon from the block of knives to improve their chances of survival. As they enter the kitchen, they slip and fall hard on the linoleum, cracking their elbow. They realize the floor is wet, and a flash of lightning reveals their hands are covered in a crimson stain. The narrator understands they have slipped in a pool of blood that is not their own. A surge of adrenaline pushes them back to their feet. They reach the kitchen counter, but their frantic search for the knife block proves futile. The tension escalates with the sound of approaching footsteps. The narrator becomes certain they are no longer alone in the dark kitchen, feeling the palpable presence of another person whose gaze seems to bore into them. A profound sense of dread and realization washes over them. They acknowledge a critical error in judgment, having underestimated a dangerously capable individual, and now believe they are about to pay for that mistake with their life. Part 1. Chapter 1. 3 months before the prologue's events, Millie is cleaning the impeccably designed but largely unused kitchen in Amber DeGraw's penthouse apartment. She reflects on Amber's habit of eating out and her collection of pristine, high-end appliances. Just as Millie finishes her work, Amber enters the kitchen, dressed in a dramatic zebra print outfit. Amber breathlessly informs Millie she must stay to babysit her 9-month-old daughter, Olive, while she goes for a pedicure. Millie feels an internal cringe at this last-minute demand. While she appreciates the high pay and generally enjoys caring for the sweet-natured Olive, she cannot miss another social psychology class, which is crucial for her college degree. She explains this to Amber, who dismisses the concern and pressures her to skip it. Their conversation is interrupted by Olive's cries from the living room. Millie instinctively goes to the baby, who immediately calms upon being held, her red, tear-streaked face brightening. Amber, already preparing to leave, assures Millie she will not be gone long, a statement Millie knows is untrue. As Amber searches her purse, Olive looks up at Millie, smiles, and clearly says Mama. Amber freezes, her expression turning from neutral to angry. She accuses Millie of having Olive call her mother. Millie desperately denies this, explaining that Millie simply sounds similar, but Olive, oblivious, gleefully repeats the word. Amber's anger escalates. She demands to know if Millie thinks she is a bad mother and snatches a crying Olive from Millie's arms. Olive reaches back for Millie, sobbing Mama again, which only deepens Amber's fury. As Amber scolds the baby, insisting she is the real mother, Millie understands with absolute certainty that she has just lost her job. Chapter 2. Walking home from the train station to her South Bronx apartment, Millie clutches her purse and a can of mace, hyper-aware of her dangerous neighborhood. She feels a growing dread about her financial situation, knowing that without a new job to replace the one she just lost, she could soon be homeless. Her decision to pursue a college degree now feels like a financial misstep. As she approaches her building, she becomes certain someone is following her, her anxiety spiking with the sound of approaching footsteps. She quickly ascends the uneven steps to her building's entrance, a place with no doorman, only a key and a lock that always sticks. A shadow falls over her, and she turns to see a man in his mid-20s with a black trench coat and a distinctive scar over his left eyebrow. He seems vaguely familiar and insists he lives in apartment 2C, directly below her. He jingles his keys as proof. Reluctantly, Millie lets him in, reasoning he could force his way in if he wanted. She leads the way up the stairs, internally preoccupied with her urgent need for a new job and the difficulty her hidden past will create in finding one. The man makes awkward small talk about the weather, which Millie barely acknowledges. When they reach the second floor, he bids her goodbye. It is only after he walks away that a chilling detail registers with Millie. The man had specifically said he lived right below her. She realizes he knew she lived in apartment 3C, a fact she finds unsettling. Hurrying to her own apartment, she locks and deadbolts the door behind her. She takes a brief, precarious shower in her small bathroom, expertly navigating the unpredictable water temperature. As she washes off the city's grime, she reflects on the stability she lost with Amber and the near-impossible task of finding new work. She knows she cannot pass the background checks required by most childcare services, and her references are scarce because her past cleaning jobs involved an unspecified additional service she no longer provides. Wrapped in a bathrobe, she moves into her combined kitchen and living room, a space far smaller than any single room in the DeGraws penthouse. She puts a pot of water on the stove to boil, contemplating a meager dinner of noodles. Her thoughts are abruptly interrupted by loud, insistent pounding on her door. A muffled voice shouts her name, demanding to be let in and declaring they know she is in there. Chapter 3. The pounding on her door forces Millie to answer. Peering through the peephole, she sees her boyfriend, Brock Cunningham, standing in the hall in his business suit, his expression angry. She unlocks the door, and he immediately enters, grabbing her arm and demanding to know why she missed their dinner plans and ignored his messages. Millie apologizes, explaining that she was fired by Amber DeGraw and was too upset to go out. When she reveals the reason for her firing, that Olive kept calling her Mama, Brock's initial anger transforms into unexpected laughter. After a moment of offense, Millie joins in, the absurdity of the situation overwhelming her. The shared laughter diffuses the tension, and Brock pulls her into an embrace, his frustration forgotten. Millie reflects that their 6-month relationship is in a sweet spot, past the initial awkwardness but before the revelation of deeper flaws. She considers Brock nearly perfect, a handsome lawyer from a good family, whose only known imperfection is a managed heart condition. Brock suggests taking her out to dinner to cheer her up, but Millie insists on staying home to search for new jobs, stressing her immediate financial worries. This leads Brock to renew his previous offer for her to move into his luxurious, safe Central Park apartment. He argues persuasively that she would not have to worry about rent and could focus on her degree. Internally, Millie acknowledges the logic of his proposal, but a voice in her head screams in protest. She knows the single, powerful reason she cannot accept is that Brock has no idea about her true past. She fears that revealing her secrets would end their relationship, and she is not ready for that. To placate him, she tells him she needs her own space and, when he presses her, she lies and says she will think about moving in, knowing full well she has no intention of doing so. Chapter 4. 3 weeks after losing her job, Millie is on the verge of financial ruin with less than $200 in her bank account. She has had 9 unsuccessful interviews for cleaning or babysitting positions, which she suspects is due to failed background checks stemming from her criminal record. Her 10th interview is with Douglas Garrick at his Upper West Side penthouse, a Gothic building that feels like a fortress. As she enters, she experiences a familiar prickling sensation of being watched, a feeling that has haunted her since the night she was fired. Turning, she spots a black Mazda with a cracked right headlight, a detail that triggers a strong sense of déjà vu, as she believes she saw the same car near her South Bronx apartment. She memorized its license plate, 58F321, before being ushered inside by the doorman. The lobby is opulent, and she learns the Garricks live in the penthouse, accessed by a private elevator key. Douglas Garrick greets her warmly in the foyer, insisting she call him by his first name. He is a handsome, impeccably dressed man in his 40s. He explains that his wife, Wendy, usually handles the housework but has been unwell, necessitating help. Millie finds this unusual for a woman in a penthouse. He outlines the job, emphasizing that Millie must use their special, scent-free cleaning supplies because his wife is sensitive to smells. He claims the apartment is a mess, but Millie observes it is immaculate and filled with priceless antiques. During their conversation on an incredibly soft leather sofa, Douglas asks about her experience. Millie mentions she is a student studying social work and has cooking experience. She mistakenly offers her babysitting services, causing Douglas to flinch and dismiss the idea, making her fear she has touched on a sensitive subject like infertility. He then gives her a tour of the massive, multi-level penthouse, which includes a state-of-the-art kitchen and numerous specialized rooms. The tour concludes at a closed door to the guest bedroom. Douglas explains his wife is inside recovering from a chronic illness that causes good and bad days. He instructs Millie to leave Wendy alone if the door is closed, emphasizing her need for rest. He stares at the door with a troubled expression before finally asking Millie when she can start. Chapter 5. Emerging from a social psychology lecture, Millie is visibly shaken. Professor Kindred had detailed the murder of Kitty Genovese, emphasizing the bystander effect where numerous witnesses failed to help. Millie is deeply affected, internally vowing she would never stand by and let such a thing happen. Brock meets her after class, and she shares her distress over the story. He corrects her, explaining the account was sensationalized by the media, with fewer witnesses and some who did call for help. Millie feels a familiar sense of inadequacy at his superior knowledge. As they walk, Brock shifts the conversation to celebrate her new job at the Garrick penthouse. He is impressed by the apartment's value and recognizes Douglas Garrick as the CEO of Coinstock, recalling him as a genuinely nice guy. Millie agrees but feels a lingering unease about the closed door and the unseen wife. Brock notes the penthouse's proximity to his own apartment, again hinting that she should move in. He then reveals that his parents want to meet her, and he expresses a desire to meet her parents as well. This news causes Millie significant anxiety, as she is estranged from her family and is not ready for that level of commitment. She reflects on the stark difference between Brock and her last boyfriend, who knew all her secrets from the start. Brock's perfection and his urgency to settle down due to his heart condition history make her feel trapped and unprepared. The pressure escalates when Brock, holding her hands and looking into her eyes, tells her he kind of loves her. Millie's heart races, but she cannot reciprocate, knowing how much he still doesn't know about her. She deflects with a non-committal response. As this happens, she is distracted by the familiar, unsettling sensation that someone is watching her. Brock, thankfully, does not press the issue and suggests they get sushi, leaving Millie to internally note another unshared detail, that she does not like sushi. Chapter 6. On her first day working for the Garricks, Millie uses her key to take the private elevator up to the penthouse. She finds the apartment silent and empty after calling out for both Douglas and Wendy. Venturing into the living room, she feels dwarfed by the priceless antique furniture. Her attention is drawn to a series of photographs on the mantel, each featuring Douglas and a slender, auburn-haired woman she assumes is his wife, Wendy. They are pictured in various glamorous locations, from a ski slope to a formal event. A loud thump from upstairs startles her, making her step away from the mantel, worried she will be perceived as snooping. Seeing no one on the stairwell, she decides to begin her work. She heads to the master bedroom to retrieve the laundry hamper Douglas had pointed out. When she opens the wicker basket, she is met with a baffling sight. All the dirty laundry inside is neatly folded, a practice she has never encountered before in her work. Carrying the hamper into the hallway, she notices the guest bedroom door is now slightly ajar. Peering through the crack, she sees a single green eye staring back at her. Millie introduces herself as the new cleaner and begins to approach the door, but before she can get close, it snaps shut. She is left feeling awkward and slightly unsettled by the abrupt dismissal. She considers knocking to introduce herself properly but remembers Douglas's specific instruction not to bother his wife. Resolving to follow orders, she continues with her tasks, planning to do the laundry, prepare dinner, and leave without further intrusion. Chapter 7. After finishing the laundry and tidying the already spotless upstairs, Millie moves to the kitchen to prepare dinner. She finds a meticulously detailed menu on the refrigerator, complete with specific recipes and instructions for sourcing gourmet ingredients from multiple specialty stores. The list, which includes items like pate and cornichon, feels intimidating and overly complex, dampening her initial enthusiasm for the job. She focuses on the scheduled meal for the evening, Cornish game hen, a dish she has never prepared before. 2 hours later, with the hen cooking in the oven and the laundry put away, she sets the formal dining table for two. As she checks on the food, she hears the elevator doors open and Douglas's voice echo through the apartment as he calls out to his wife. Millie watches the stairwell, hoping to finally see Wendy emerge, but the upper floor remains silent. She greets Douglas and informs him dinner is ready. He thanks her but notes that Wendy will likely not be joining him, explaining she is still feeling unwell. Millie offers to bring a plate upstairs, but Douglas insists he will do it himself. She serves the 2 plates of food in the dining room just as Douglas comes back downstairs. When she asks after his wife, he quietly confirms it is not a good day for her. Millie offers once more to take the plate up, and this time Douglas's lips tighten with clear irritation at her persistence. He firmly reminds her that he has already declined her offer. Catching the hint, Millie quickly wishes him a good evening and gathers her things to leave. As the elevator doors close behind her, she feels a wave of relief, acknowledging to herself that something about the penthouse leaves her with a deep sense of unease. Chapter 8. Later that evening, Millie shares her concerns about the Gerricks with Brock over a glass of wine at his apartment. She explains that after half a dozen visits, she has still never seen Wendy Gerrick, only ever catching a glimpse of a single eye through a cracked door. Brock responds with playful, unhelpful theories, suggesting Wendy could be a vampire who cannot go out in daylight, a werewolf, or a woman with a magical ribbon holding her head on. Millie dismisses his jokes, stating she simply has a bad feeling about the situation. As they talk, Brock becomes distracted by her mostly full glass of expensive wine. He seems disappointed that she is not appreciating it, explaining it is a Giuseppe Quintarelli as if that should hold significance. When Millie says she is not thirsty, he looks genuinely troubled, correcting her that one does not drink fine wine out of thirst. To please him, she finishes the glass, pretending to enjoy it, but her mind remains preoccupied with the mystery of Wendy Gerrick and the unsettling atmosphere of the penthouse. Chapter 9. After a month of working for the Gerricks, Millie's curiosity about the unseen Wendy has become a habit of listening at the guest bedroom door. This time, she clearly hears the sound of someone sobbing inside. Remembering the story of Kitty Genovese and feeling a compulsion to help, she breaks her promise to Douglas and knocks on the door. The crying stops immediately. Millie calls out, insisting she will not leave until she knows Wendy is all right. After a moment of silence, the door cracks open 2 inches, revealing the same green eye, now red-veined and puffy from crying. Wendy Gerrick hisses at Millie, demanding to know what she wants. When Millie explains she heard crying, Wendy tightly insists she is fine and just wants to rest, reminding Millie that her husband said she was unwell. Before Millie can say another word, Wendy shuts the door in her face. Dejected, Millie returns downstairs. She is putting away the vacuum cleaner when Douglas arrives home, unusually chipper and carrying a bouquet of roses and a blue velvet box. Millie cautiously informs him that his wife seemed upset and was crying. Douglas's cheeks flush red, and he pointedly asks if she spoke to Wendy. Millie, not wanting to admit she disobeyed him, says she did not. Relieved, Douglas reiterates that she should be left alone. He then proudly shows Millie the gift, a stunning diamond bracelet inscribed with a personal message, confident his wife will love it. As Douglas heads upstairs with the gifts, Millie is left deeply conflicted. Douglas appears to be a doting, generous husband, while Wendy remains a prisoner in her room. The situation feels profoundly abnormal, but she hears Brock's voice in her head, telling her it is none of her business and that she should just leave it alone. Chapter 10. Millie confirms with Douglas Gerrick via text that she will be over that evening. With no classes, her day is dedicated to the elaborate grocery shopping and cleaning for the penthouse. She reflects on her relationship with Brock, acknowledging she spends many nights at his nearby apartment but refuses to officially move in. She feels she cannot take that step until she tells him the truth about her past, a prospect that terrifies her because she fears his perfect, upper-class family would convince him to leave her. Her thoughts drift to her previous relationship with Enzo Accardi. They began as friends and partners in a secret mission, helping women escape abusive relationships by providing resources, new identities, and, on a few messy occasions, more forceful interventions. Enzo was the one who encouraged her to get a social work degree, setting her on a path to a normal life. Their friendship evolved into a passionate romance, and they quickly moved in together. Millie remembers it as the happiest time of her life. That happiness ended when Enzo received a call from Italy informing him his mother had a stroke. Despite a price on his head from a past violent encounter, he felt compelled to return to Sicily to care for her. He promised to come back soon, but as his mother's illness dragged on, it became clear he could not leave. After a year of long-distance calls, Millie confronted him, and they mutually, sadly, ended their relationship. This led her to Brock and the pursuit of a normal life, a stark contrast to the dangerous excitement of her time with Enzo. Her current mission feels mundanely normal, though the grocery list Douglas provided is absurdly complex, filled with exotic items like Buddha's hand and cucamelon that sound made up. As she leaves her apartment building, she nearly collides with her neighbor, Xavier, the man with the scar and gold tooth. He greets her by name, which unsettles her. He asks about her plans and offers to accompany her grocery shopping, an offer she firmly declines. Pushing past him, she feels a renewed sense of unease, connecting his intrusive behavior to her persistent feeling of being watched. She seriously considers moving, perhaps even accepting Brock's offer, to escape Xavier's unsettling attention. Chapter 11. Millie arrives at the Garrick penthouse, her arms straining under the weight of 4 overflowing grocery bags containing the exotic items from Douglas's list. As she stops in the living room to readjust her grip, she hears the sound of muffled shouting from upstairs. This is followed by a loud crash, like shattering glass. Alarmed, she moves toward the stairwell, her hand on the banister, ready to investigate. Before she can take a step, a door slams upstairs and Douglas appears at the bottom of the stairs. He is dressed in a business shirt with his tie loosened, his face flushed. He holds a small pink gift bag and seems startled to see her, questioning her presence. Millie explains she was putting away the groceries but heard a noise and was worried. As she speaks, her eyes are drawn to a fresh, angry tear in the fabric of his dress shirt, right above the breast pocket. Douglas dismisses her concern, stating sharply that everything is fine and instructing her to leave the groceries and go. He then hands her the gift bag, telling her to return it because Wendy did not want it. When Millie points out she cannot return it without a receipt and suggests his assistant handle it, his demeanor shifts. He cocks his head and speaks to her with clear disrespect, reminding her that running errands is part of her job. This is the first time Douglas has been rude to her, revealing a side of him she has not seen before. He physically positions himself between her and the stairwell, his arms crossed, making it clear she is not to go upstairs. Millie realizes that even if she could get past him, Wendy would likely just insist she was fine. Feeling powerless and dismissed, she understands there is nothing she can do but obey his order and leave. Chapter 12. Walking home from the subway to her South Bronx apartment as dusk falls, Millie is gripped by the familiar, prickling sensation of being watched. Here, unlike in Manhattan, the feeling feels like justified paranoia, a necessary survival instinct. She quickens her pace, her hand clenched around the can of mace in her pocket. The feeling only subsides once she is safely inside her building, a pattern that convinces her the threat is real and not in her imagination. She checks her mailbox, pulling out a stack of bills that highlight her financial strain, and declines Brock's invitation to come over, citing exhaustion. As she sorts her mail, the building door opens and her neighbor, Xavier, enters. He greets her with excessive cheerfulness. Millie responds stiffly and immediately heads for the stairs, hoping he will stay behind, but he follows closely beside her. He asks about her plans for the evening and, when she says she has none, invites himself over to watch a movie. She refuses, stating she is tired and plans to shower and go to bed. Undeterred, Xavier grins, his gold tooth glinting, and makes a lewd suggestion about joining her. Millie ignores him, focusing on reaching her apartment door and counting down the steps. As they near her floor, he escalates his harassment, questioning her relationship with Brock and insisting she needs a real man. Just as she is about to reach her door, his hand shoots out and grabs her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh, and she realizes with a surge of panic that she is not going to make it to safety. Chapter 13. Xavier's hand clamps over Millie's mouth, silencing her, as he pins her against the wall. He sneers at her, accusing her of thinking she is too good for him, and suggests they go inside her apartment to have some fun. With his body pressed against her, Millie acts. Using her free arm, she pulls out the can of mace and sprays it directly into his face. As he screams in pain, she shoves him with all her strength. The steep staircase works in her favor. Xavier tumbles down the entire flight of stairs, landing with a sickening crack and a heavy thud on the landing below. Millie stands at the top, staring down at his motionless body, wondering if she has killed him. She rushes down to find him groaning, his chest still moving. He is alive but injured. A surge of violent impulse overtakes her. She kicks him hard in the ribs 3 times, each impact bringing her a grim sense of satisfaction. She even contemplates rolling his body down the next flight of stairs. But the thought is fleeting. She remembers her 10 years in prison and knows she cannot go back. With that control reasserted, she takes out her phone and dials 911, deciding to seek justice through the proper channels rather than through further violence. Chapter 14. An hour after the attack, police and an ambulance are outside Millie's building. Xavier, who has a broken arm, a concussion, and possible broken ribs, is taken away for medical treatment. Millie is frustrated that none of her neighbors came to her aid during the assault. She waits in her apartment after giving an initial statement, and Brock is on his way. She observes from her window as the police speak with neighbors and Xavier. Soon, an officer, Scavo, comes to her door. His demeanor is dismissive and skeptical, unlike the sympathetic female officer she first spoke with. He questions her clothing and suggests she may have misread Xavier's intentions, presenting Xavier's version of events where she was the aggressor after a perceived rejection. Officer Scavo reveals a neighbor witnessed Millie kicking Xavier while he was on the ground, and he brings up her prison record for violent behavior, framing the incident as her word against Xavier's. Millie is stunned and furious, feeling the system is siding with her attacker. She is told Xavier has not decided whether to press charges and is instructed to stay local. As a shaken Millie lets Officer Scavo out, Brock arrives. Once the door is closed and locked, Millie's composure breaks into tears of pure rage at the injustice. Brock, unaware of the full story or her criminal history, assumes Xavier will be prosecuted and expresses his hope that the man goes to prison. Millie realizes she cannot tell him the truth without explaining her past, something she feels she cannot do. She agrees with Brock that she cannot stay in the apartment. He suggests she pack a week's worth of clothes and stay with him while she looks for a new place. Exhausted and cornered, Millie has no energy to argue and agrees to pack, facing the daunting prospect of finding affordable housing in a safer neighborhood. Chapter 15. While folding laundry in the massive Garrick master bedroom, Millie discovers a stark brown and red stain on the collar of one of Wendy's delicate white nightgowns. She immediately recognizes it as a significant bloodstain. As she processes this disturbing find, her phone rings. It is Officer Scavo from the Bronx police station. He informs her that Xavier Murrin has decided not to press charges against her, framing this as good news. He dismisses her desire to press charges against Xavier, citing the witness who saw her kicking him and reminding her of her prison record. He tells her she is lucky to avoid jail herself and warns her to get her anger under control. The final blow is the news that Xavier has been released from the hospital and was never arrested, meaning he is free to return to the apartment building. As she hangs up, shaken and furious, she realizes Douglas Garrick is standing in the doorway, having overheard at least part of the conversation. He enters the room, loosens his tie, and tosses his jacket onto a dresser, then pointedly chastises her for not immediately hanging it up in the closet. His tone has a new, sharp edge. As she moves to hang up the jacket, he studies her and asks if she is married or has a boyfriend. When she confirms she has a boyfriend, his eyes appraise her in a way that makes her deeply uncomfortable. His gaze then falls upon the blood-stained nightgown still lying on the bed. Millie is certain she hears him take a sharp breath. To deflect and explain her focus on the garment, she quickly lies, stating she needs to look up how to remove tomato sauce stains. Douglas nods his approval and tells her to do that. As he leaves, Millie knows the truth. She does not need to look up anything, as she already knows exactly how to get bloodstains out of fabric. Chapter 16. Sitting at an outdoor table at a Middle Eastern restaurant with Brock, Millie is too distracted to enjoy their date. She is consumed by the persistent, prickling sensation of being watched, convinced that Xavier is stalking her even with his injuries. Brock, looking handsome and talking about his work, notices her distraction but accepts her assurance that she is fine without pressing further. Millie reflects on how trusting he is, a trait that is both a relief and a source of frustration as it allows her secrets to remain hidden. Her mind drifts to how they met during a college shadowing program and how he asked her out despite her initial hesitation after her breakup with Enzo. She acknowledges he has been a good, seemingly perfect boyfriend, yet she feels a growing distance because he cannot understand the threat she feels or the history that prevents her from seeking proper justice. The fear of returning to her South Bronx apartment, knowing Xavier is free and living there, becomes overwhelming. In a moment of desperate impulse, driven by the need for safety rather than readiness, she blurts out a proposal that they move in together. Brock's face lights up with a huge smile, and he immediately agrees, taking her hand and telling her he loves her. As Millie struggles to reciprocate, the feeling of being watched becomes unbearable. She whips her head around, expecting to see Xavier, but instead, her eyes land on a completely unexpected person standing on the street, Douglas Garrick. Chapter 17. Millie abruptly leaves Brock at the restaurant table and darts into the street, pursuing Douglas Garrick. She had assumed her stalker was Xavier, but now suspects it may have been Douglas all along. She follows him for a block and observes that he is not alone but with a blonde woman carrying a utilitarian brown purse. This woman is definitely not Wendy Garrick. Millie assumes she is Douglas's mistress, and their animated conversation suggests an argument, perhaps about his refusal to leave his wife. She watches them enter a small brownstone apartment building without a doorman. As she stares at the building, Brock calls, confused and concerned by her sudden departure. Millie lies, saying she saw an old friend and promises to return shortly. She starts walking back to the restaurant, already dreading his questions. On her way back, her attention is captured by a black Mazda with a cracked right headlight, the same car she has seen near her apartment and the Garrick's penthouse. The license plate, 58F321, confirms it is the vehicle she memorized. A horrible, cold realization dawns on her. She had always connected this car to the feeling of being watched, but she assumed the stalker was Xavier. Finding the car parked near Douglas's mistress's apartment strongly implies Douglas is the one who has been following her. The most chilling part is the timeline. This sensation began before she even started working for him, meaning Douglas was stalking her before he hired her. This revelation sends a cold shiver down her spine as she grapples with the terrifying question of what is really going on. Chapter 18. Brock drives Millie to her South Bronx apartment to help her move in with him. Despite the luxury and safety his Upper West Side apartment offers, Millie feels a deep sense of unease about the move, knowing she is building a life with him under false pretenses. She rationalizes keeping her job with the Garricks to maintain financial independence, just in case Brock discovers her past and ends their relationship. She also reassures herself that her suspicion of Douglas stalking her was likely a mistaken conclusion. As they turn onto her street, they find a police car with flashing lights parked in front of her building. Millie panics, fearing Xavier has pressed charges and they are there for her. Instead, they witness officers leading a handcuffed Xavier out of the building. He is loudly protesting, claiming that a large quantity of heroin found in his apartment is not his. When he attempts a futile escape, he is quickly tackled and subdued by the police. Overjoyed and relieved at this turn of events, Millie points out to Brock that Xavier, now facing serious drug charges, will not be returning to the building. This means she no longer has to move out for her safety. She immediately tells Brock she does not have to move in with him after all. Brock is hurt and confused, his tone turning icy as he questions whether she even wants to live with him. Millie backtracks, apologizing and claiming she just needs her own space, but Brock seems unconvinced. Internally, Millie knows the real reason is her need to delay the inevitable moment when her past is revealed, especially since she fears his parents will conduct a background check. With Xavier in jail, she has bought herself a temporary reprieve from having to make a decision. Chapter 19. Arriving at the Garrick penthouse, Millie finds the atmosphere unusually quiet. She tries to dismiss her previous alarm over the blood-stained nightgown, reasoning there could be innocent explanations. Her resolve is shattered when she enters the main upstairs bathroom and discovers a bloody half-handprint on the sink and a trail of crimson droplets on the linoleum floor. Her eyes follow the trail out of the bathroom and down the dim hallway, where the specks of blood are visible in the carpet, leading directly to the door of the guest bedroom. Despite Douglas's explicit instructions and Wendy's previous hostility, Millie feels compelled to act. Remembering Kitty Genovese, she cannot ignore a literal trail of blood. She knocks on the door and calls out to Wendy. There is only silence from the other side. Growing more concerned, she tries the doorknob and finds it locked. She announces that she will call the police if Wendy does not open the door. This threat elicits a response. A choked voice from inside insists she is fine and pleads with Millie to go away, blaming the blood on a cracked tooth. Millie remains firm, stating she will not leave until she sees for herself that Wendy is all right. After a long, tense silence, a click signals the door being unlocked. It slowly cracks open. The sight that meets Millie's eyes is so shocking she has to clamp a hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. Chapter 20. The door opens to reveal Wendy Garrick's brutally beaten face. Her features are a mosaic of bruises in various stages of healing, from fresh, angry marks to older, yellowing ones. She insists she is fine, claiming the injuries are from a fall exacerbated by blood-thinning medication. Millie sees blood staining the front of Wendy's pink nightgown, a stark confirmation of the violence she has endured. Horrified, Millie urges Wendy to go to a hospital to treat her injuries and, crucially, to report the assault. Wendy responds not with gratitude, but with a low, urgent warning. Her bruised eyes widen with palpable fear as she tells Millie she has no idea what she is dealing with and insists she does not want her help. She pleads with Millie, her voice filled with a terrible urgency, to walk away, close the door, and get out for her own good. Before Millie can argue or offer further assistance, Wendy slams the door shut, leaving Millie standing alone in the hallway. The message is unequivocal: Wendy is trapped in a cycle of abuse and is too terrified to accept help. Despite the clear and desperate warning to mind her own business, Millie knows she has never been good at walking away from someone in need. Chapter 21. In her social psychology class, Professor Kindred discusses an experiment where world-renowned violinist Josh Bell played in a subway station and was largely ignored. He posits this demonstrates how people avoid situations where they might feel obligated to help. Millie, reflecting on her own inability to walk away from those in need, contributes that people ignored the musician to avoid having to give money. After class, she runs into her former employer, Amber DeGraw, who is pushing Olive in a stroller. Amber's demeanor is unexpectedly friendly, but she makes a pointed, insinuating remark about Millie working for Douglas Garrick, suggesting she is making the most of it. When Millie says hello to Olive, the baby delightedly calls her Mama, causing Amber's face to drain of color. She scolds Millie for upsetting Olive and quickly hurries away. Millie's phone rings, and she expects it to be a tense call from Douglas or Brock. Instead, it is a woman named Lisa from JobMatch, the service Millie used to advertise her cleaning services. Lisa explains that Millie's ad never went live because her credit card was declined and was never updated. Millie is stunned, stopping in the middle of the street. This means her advertisement for work was never publicly posted online. She realizes this fact changes everything about how she got her current job. The only person who contacted her for an interview unsolicited, the only person who sought her out, was Douglas Garrick. Chapter 22. The revelation that her job ad never went live sends a wave of sickness through Millie. She realizes Douglas Garrick contacted her unsolicited, and the question of how he obtained her phone number becomes terrifying. This, combined with the persistent feeling of being watched and the connection of the black Mazda to Douglas, solidifies her fear that he has been targeting her from the beginning. Standing on the street, she feels paranoid and surveilled. Driven by a need for answers, she impulsively calls Douglas. When a phone rings directly behind her, she whirls around in a panic, but it is only a teenage girl. Douglas answers, and Millie, unprepared, quickly fabricates a story about working on her resume. She asks him how he heard about her and got her number. After a moment's thought, he claims it was his wife, Wendy, who gave him the number, saying a friend had recommended Millie. Millie is immediately skeptical. When she presses for the friend's name, Douglas becomes defensive and instructs her not to bother Wendy about it. She politely ends the call, confirming she will be at the penthouse that evening. Internally, she is resolute. Despite Douglas's warning, she is now determined to confront Wendy Garrick directly and get the truth about how her name and number came into their lives. Chapter 23. Arriving at the penthouse with Douglas's dry cleaning, Millie finds the house silent. She is determined to confront Wendy. She goes upstairs and, ignoring the dark, non-functional hallway lights, knocks on the guest bedroom door. Wendy answers, her face still bruised but healing, and her demeanor is one of resigned exhaustion. Millie directly asks how she got her phone number, rejecting Wendy's initial claim that it was from the ad. Under pressure, Wendy reveals she got the number from Ginger Howell, a woman Millie helped escape an abusive marriage 2 years earlier. This confession confirms Millie's suspicion. Wendy deliberately sought her out because she knew about Millie's secret past of helping abused women. Wendy explains she was desperate after Douglas broke her wrist, and hiring a cleaner was the only way she could get someone else in the house. But upon seeing Millie, her fear of Douglas overwhelmed her, and she decided she could not go through with an escape plan. She warns Millie that Douglas is dangerously powerful, sees everything, and would spend his vast fortune to track her down. Millie, however, is undeterred. She asks if Wendy has cash or outside friends, but Wendy insists it is too dangerous and begs her to stop. In a moment of bitter anger, Wendy removes the diamond bracelet Douglas gave her, the one inscribed to W, "You are mine forever, love D," and forces it into Millie's hand, telling her to get it out of her sight. Millie makes a final, passionate plea to help, and for a split second, she sees a flicker of hope in Wendy's eyes before it is extinguished by fear. Wendy firmly refuses and slams the door. Despite the warning and her own fear, Millie's resolve is steeled. She knows she cannot walk away and is confident she can handle Douglas Garrick. Chapter 24. As Millie crosses the street to the Garricks building, she nearly gets hit by a distracted biker, a minor irritation compared to the call from Brock that comes through. She answers, and he invites her to dinner. She declines, citing a late night at the Garricks, but suggests dinner the following night when Douglas will be away. Brock agrees but states they need to have a serious talk about where he stands in their relationship. Millie knows he is right and that the conversation will require her to reveal her criminal past, a prospect that fills her with dread. She agrees to meet him, hanging up with a heavy feeling of impending loss. Entering the Garricks building, the elderly doorman holds the door open and gives her a wink, which she finds momentarily strange but dismisses as a minor concern. She takes the private elevator up to the penthouse, mentally preparing for her work. When the elevator doors open, she is completely startled. For the first time since she began working there, Wendy Garrick is outside the guest bedroom, standing directly in front of the elevator in the foyer. She looks at Millie with her large, green eyes and delivers a simple, urgent statement. She says they need to talk. Chapter 25. Wendy Garrick pulls Millie onto the sofa, her demeanor transformed from fearful to determined. She reveals that after their last conversation, she felt so hopeless she considered suicide, but Millie's offer of help and her advice to contact someone from her past gave her a lifeline. Wendy reached out to an old college friend, Fiona, who lives on an isolated farm in upstate New York. Fiona has agreed to let Wendy stay with her indefinitely. While acknowledging this is not a permanent solution, Wendy explains it will give her a safe place to hide from Douglas while she figures out her next legal steps. She then asks for Millie's help with a critical part of the plan. When Douglas leaves town tomorrow, she needs a ride to Albany, where Fiona can pick her up. She cannot rent a car herself without using her ID, which would alert Douglas. Millie immediately agrees to rent the car and drive her, refusing Wendy's offer of monetary compensation despite her own financial worries. Wendy is overwhelmed with gratitude, hugging Millie and noting how fragile her body feels. She then delivers a grave warning, her eyes filled with tears, insisting that Millie does not fully understand the danger. She states that Douglas is an extremely dangerous man who will stop at nothing to find her and bring her back. Millie outwardly claims she is not scared, but internally, a voice cautions her that underestimating Douglas Garrick would be a grave mistake. Chapter 26. The next morning, Millie goes to a rental car agency to secure the vehicle for Wendy's escape. She uses her own credit card for the transaction, having accepted cash from Wendy to cover the cost but wanting no direct link to her. As she stands at the counter, she is overcome by the familiar, prickling sensation of being watched. She turns to look through the large picture windows but sees no one. This recurring feeling, which has persisted even after Xavier's imprisonment, now solidifies her fear that her stalker is not Xavier but Douglas Garrick. She worries he may already know about their plan. Her frustration mounts when the rental agent informs her that her reserved grey Ford Focus is not available, and she is instead offered a red Hyundai. Millie argues, knowing an inconspicuous vehicle is crucial, but with limited options, she reluctantly agrees to take the red car. Her primary focus is to get out of the rental office and out of the city as quickly as possible, feeling an urgent need to put distance between herself, Wendy, and the ominous presence she feels is watching them. Chapter 27. Millie picks up Wendy a block away from the penthouse to avoid the doorman, parking her conspicuously red rental car. She receives a text from Douglas confirming her cleaning schedule for that evening, to which she lies, agreeing to come, knowing she will be driving his wife to freedom. Wendy arrives, dressed comfortably in a hoodie and jeans, beaming with excitement and carrying 2 suitcases. They load the car and begin their drive out of the city. As they drive, Wendy reveals she successfully pretended to be asleep when Douglas said goodbye and that he is likely now boarding his flight to Los Angeles. She is relieved Millie told no one about their plan. While stopped at a red light, Millie checks her rearview mirror and her blood runs cold. She spots a black Mazda with a cracked right headlight directly behind them, the same car she has seen stalking her for months. She tries to get a look at the license plate and confirms the first 3 characters are 58F, a match. Trying not to panic Wendy, Millie begins driving erratically, changing lanes to test if the car is following them. It remains behind her, confirming her worst fears. She considers the possibilities, it could be Douglas, or perhaps Xavier was released from jail, but neither fully explains the persistent stalking. As they merge onto the FDR drive, Millie prepares to accelerate to lose the tail, but when she checks her mirror again, the Mazda is gone. It did not follow them onto the highway. A wave of relief mixed with confusion washes over her. She was certain they were being followed, but now it appears to have been a coincidence. She reassures herself that everything is going to be fine. Chapter 28. Millie and Wendy stop at a McDonald's off the highway, and Wendy is ecstatic at the prospect of fast food, a treat forbidden by Douglas. As Wendy heads inside, Millie's phone rings. It is Brock, and she realizes with a sinking feeling that she has completely forgotten their dinner plans and the serious talk they were supposed to have. She stays in the car to take the call. Brock is furious that she stood him up without notice. When she offers a weak excuse about studying, his anger escalates. He demands to know where their relationship is going, stating he is ready for a more serious commitment and needs to know if he is wasting his time. Cornered and not wanting to lose him, Millie knows she has only 2 choices, end the relationship or tell him what he wants to hear. Choosing the latter, she tells him she loves him. The words immediately diffuse his anger, and he reciprocates, his tone softening. They agree to have their important conversation the following week. After hanging up, Millie is left with a hollow feeling. She has preserved the relationship for now, but she knows it is built on the impending revelation of her past. She reflects that Brock loves an idealized version of her, and she doubts a normal, perfect life with him is possible, acknowledging that only one man, Enzo, has ever truly understood her imperfect reality. Chapter 29. After a 5-hour drive with a stop for McDonald's, Millie and Wendy arrive near Albany. Millie pulls into the parking lot of a cheap, secluded motel with exterior room access. Wendy's initial excitement gives way to panic, and she voices her fear that Douglas, with his genius and vast resources, will inevitably find her. Millie firmly reassures her that she is doing the right thing. Wendy gives Millie cash, and Millie goes to the motel office to secure a room under her own name to avoid leaving an electronic trail for Wendy. The young, disinterested clerk at the front desk takes her driver's license and cash, handing over a physical key for room 207. He makes a suggestive comment, which Millie hopes will lead him to remember her as a sex worker rather than someone aiding an escape. Back at the car, a tearful Wendy thanks Millie, stating she has saved her life. They share a heartfelt goodbye in the deserted parking lot, with Wendy hugging Millie's fragile frame one last time. Wendy extracts a final, hoarse plea for Millie to be careful, warning that Douglas will leave nothing unturned in his search. Millie confidently reassures her she can handle him. She watches Wendy, now in a low baseball cap, carry her bags around to the back of the motel and disappear from sight. With her mission complete, Millie gets back into the car and begins the long drive home. Chapter 30. Exhausted after nearly 8 hours of driving, Millie returns the rental car to the Happy Car rental lot just before midnight to avoid an extra day's charge. The transaction is quick and uneventful. Stepping back out onto the deserted city streets, she realizes the danger of her situation. Without a car, she must now navigate her way back to the South Bronx late at night, a prospect that feels unsafe, but she cannot afford a ride. As she stands on a street corner deliberating, a set of headlights illuminates the area. She turns to see a black Mazda sedan pulling over. Her blood runs cold as she recognizes the cracked right headlight. It is the same car that has been stalking her for months, the same one that followed her and Wendy earlier that day. Now it has found her alone on a dark, empty street. The Mazda stops, its engine cuts off, but the headlights remain on, blinding her. The driver's side door swings open, revealing the silhouette of a man stepping out into the night. Chapter 31. As the man steps out of the car, Millie prepares to defend herself with her mace. A familiar voice tells her not to shoot, and she recognizes it as Enzo. Overwhelmed with joy, she throws her arms around him. The warmth of their reunion is short-lived when he reveals he has been back in the country for over 3 months. Millie realizes he is the owner of the black Mazda and has been the one stalking her. She is furious, accusing him of being a creep. Enzo defends himself, saying he was acting as her bodyguard, not a stalker, and that he was afraid to approach her directly because he thought she was still angry at him for not returning from Italy. He reveals his mother has since passed away, making Millie feel guilty for her earlier anger. He admits he never stopped loving her and is hurt that she moved on with Brock. When Millie claims she does not need a bodyguard and that Brock can protect her, Enzo scoffs. He reveals he was the one who ensured Xavier Murrin was arrested on drug charges, framing him to get him off the streets as punishment for attacking her. He points out that Brock did nothing to protect her. This revelation stuns Millie and forces her to reconsider her feelings. Enzo offers her a ride home. In the car, which smells comfortingly of him, he asks where she was driving in such a rush earlier. Knowing he does not know everything, Millie decides to tell him the whole story about helping Wendy Garrick escape her abusive husband. Chapter 32. During the drive to her apartment, Millie tells Enzo the entire story of Douglas's abuse and Wendy's escape, trusting him completely with the secret. Enzo listens intently but expresses skepticism, warning that Douglas is a powerful and dangerous man and that it may not be as easy as she thinks. He emphasizes that Millie needs to be careful because she is the one who remains behind. Millie insists she can handle herself and that Enzo no longer needs to protect her, especially since she is with Brock. As they arrive at her building, she demands he stop following her, calling it creepy and unnecessary. He agrees and gives her his word. When she gets out of the car, he grabs her arm and tells her his number is the same, insisting she call if she needs him and that he will wait for her. Millie walks into her building, frustrated by his certainty but also unsettled by his warning. Climbing the stairs to her apartment, a terrible doubt creeps in. She wonders if she has underestimated Douglas Garrick and if he could have been aware of their plan. Standing outside her door, she fears he might be waiting inside to interrogate her. She considers calling Enzo to check the apartment with her but decides against it, not wanting to swallow her pride after her earlier declaration of independence. She unlocks the door and pushes it open, her heart pounding, expecting an ambush. The apartment is silent and dark. She calls out and receives no answer. Relieved but still on edge, she steps inside, closes the door, and locks the deadbolt, finally alone. Chapter 33. 3 days after Wendy's escape, Millie is having dinner with Brock at his apartment. He offers her a part-time receptionist position at his law firm, a job with regular hours and benefits that would be perfect with her school schedule. Millie knows this would require a background check, which would reveal her criminal record to both his firm and to Brock. Realizing she can no longer postpone the truth, she nervously begins to tell him there is something she needs to talk about. As she goes to the kitchen for water to steady her nerves, her phone rings. Wendy's name appears on the screen. Confused and alarmed, Millie answers. Wendy is sobbing on the other end, revealing in a broken voice that Douglas found her and brought her back to the penthouse. She desperately asks Millie to come. Torn between the crucial conversation with Brock and Wendy's immediate crisis, Millie knows she has no choice. She returns to the dining room and tells Brock an emergency has come up, postponing their talk yet again. To placate his visible disappointment, she assures him she would love to meet his parents. He embraces her, telling her he loves her no matter what she needs to tell him. Millie reciprocates, finding it easier to say she loves him each time, and then she leaves, hurrying toward the Garrick penthouse to confront the disastrous turn of events. Chapter 34. The elevator ride to the Garrick penthouse feels unnervingly slow and loud. Millie enters the dark apartment, her heart pounding, fearing a trap set by Douglas. She grips her can of mace and calls out. In the living room, she sees a crimson stain on the carpet and a body lying on the sofa, and she fears Wendy is dead. Rushing over, she is relieved when Wendy opens her eyes. The red stain is spilled wine, not blood. Wendy is alive but badly beaten, with a fresh, dark bruise on her cheek and what she believes are broken ribs, causing her to flinch in pain. She refuses to go to the hospital. Millie gets her an ice pack. Wendy explains that Douglas was waiting for her at Fiona's farm in Potsdam. He found her almost immediately. She is devastated and baffled by how he discovered her location so quickly. She asks Millie if she told anyone, and Millie vehemently denies it, though she internally remembers confiding in Enzo but is certain he would never betray her. Defeated, Wendy resigns herself to her fate, believing escape is impossible. Millie will not accept this. She squeezes Wendy's hand and makes a firm, resolute promise. She vows to help her and will not let Douglas Garrick get away with his abuse. Wendy no longer seems to believe her, but Millie is determined to make it right. Chapter 35. Millie continues working for the Garricks, using it as an excuse to avoid Brock and the dreaded conversation about her past. While preparing dinner in the penthouse, Wendy asks to speak with her privately. She leads Millie to a hallway bookcase and removes a hollowed-out dictionary, revealing a loaded gun hidden inside. Wendy, holding the weapon clumsily, suggests this is her only way out. Horrified, Millie pleads with her not to consider such a drastic and self-destructive action. She gently takes the gun from Wendy and explains that shooting someone is not a solution and would only land her in prison. When Wendy asks if Millie has ever shot a gun, Millie hesitantly admits she has some experience from visiting a firing range with Enzo, but she firmly rejects the idea. The sound of the elevator arriving signals Douglas's return. Millie quickly returns the dictionary to the shelf, and Wendy darts back into her bedroom. Downstairs, Douglas questions Millie's presence on the second floor but accepts her explanation about dinner. He then instructs her not to serve Wendy any potatoes and to give her only a half portion of chicken, citing an upset stomach. This detail reveals to Millie that Douglas is systematically controlling and limiting Wendy's food intake, another method of abuse. As she finishes preparing the meal, Millie's resolve hardens. She knows Wendy's situation is intolerable and must be ended, and she is now more determined than ever to find a way. Chapter 36. Lying in bed, Millie is preoccupied with the image of the hidden gun and Wendy's desperate state of mind. She knows she needs to enlist Enzo's help but hesitates, not wanting to send the wrong message. Her thoughts then drift to Brock, acknowledging his solid, reliable nature but also admitting to herself that she has never felt the same intense joy with him as she did upon seeing Enzo. Her phone buzzes with a text from Brock saying "love you." Feeling pressured, she responds with a kiss-a-face selfie instead of reciprocating the words. When he follows up with a wish that she were there, she feels guilty and frustrated. As she gets up, her phone rings. It is Douglas Garrick. He calls late at night to inform her that after this week, they will no longer require her services, citing Wendy's improved health and their need for privacy. The message is clear: he is cutting off her access to Wendy. As a parting gift, he offers her tickets to a Mets game. Millie finds this oddly specific and unsettling. After hanging up, she looks down at the Mets t-shirt she is wearing to bed. A chill runs through her. The blinds are closed, and she sees no one outside. The coincidence feels sinister, as if Douglas somehow knows what she is wearing at this very moment. Thoroughly spooked and feeling watched even in her own apartment, she overcomes her reluctance and texts Brock, asking if he wants to come over. He immediately agrees. Chapter 37. On her final day working for the Garricks, Millie is folding laundry and preparing to meet Brock for dinner, determined to finally have the talk and reveal her entire past. Her thoughts are consumed by the hidden gun and Wendy's desperate state, and she resolves to call Enzo the next day to hand over the situation, knowing he has the connections to help Wendy properly. As she finishes her work, a loud crash and the sound of a heated argument erupt from the guest bedroom. Douglas's voice booms, furious over an $80 lunch charge on a credit card. He accuses Wendy of leaving the house without permission and, in a rage, insinuates she was having a romantic lunch with another man, specifically referencing the same guy who drove you upstate. This confirms he knows about the escape attempt. A sickening crash is followed by Wendy's scream, and then the room falls silent except for a terrifying gurgling sound, as if Wendy is being choked. Millie knows she can no longer stand by. Remembering the gun hidden in the dictionary on the second-floor bookcase, she realizes she must intervene immediately to stop Douglas from killing his wife. Chapter 38. Millie races to the bookcase and retrieves the gun from the hollowed-out dictionary. Her hands shake slightly as she holds it, and a voice in her head warns her that introducing a firearm is a terrible mistake. She tells herself she only intends to scare Douglas, not shoot him. She returns to the guest bedroom, finds the door unlocked, and pushes it open. The sight inside is horrifying. Douglas has Wendy pinned against the wall, his hands wrapped around her throat, choking her. Wendy's face is turning blue, and she is making gurgling sounds, unable to scream. Millie shouts at Douglas to let her go, but he ignores her, his eyes wild with rage. Wendy's body begins to go limp. Millie points the gun at his chest and threatens to shoot if he doesn't release her, but he remains fixated on killing his wife. Realizing negotiation is over and that Wendy will be dead in seconds if she does not act, Millie understands there is only one choice left. With no other option to stop him, she pulls the trigger. Chapter 39. The gunshot echoes through the penthouse. Douglas's body goes limp and slumps to the floor, his hands releasing Wendy's neck. A pool of blood rapidly spreads beneath him. Wendy collapses, coughing and crying, but alive. Millie drops the gun, horrified, realizing she meant only to wound him but has killed him. Wendy checks for a pulse and confirms he is dead. Wendy, though shaken, immediately thanks Millie for saving her life. She then shifts into a frantic, pragmatic mode, devising a plan to protect Millie. She instructs her to wipe her fingerprints from the gun and leave immediately. Wendy will claim she shot Douglas herself, mistaking him for an intruder. She explains there are no functional cameras in the building's back entrance or elevators to contradict her story. Overwhelmed and seeing a way out, Millie agrees. Wendy insists this is her responsibility for having brought Millie into the situation. Following Wendy's advice, Millie deletes all text message conversations with both Garricks from her phone to eliminate any digital evidence of their interactions and the planned final cleaning session. As Millie prepares to leave the penthouse for the last time, her final image is of Wendy standing over her husband's corpse, a smile on her face. Chapter 40. The subway ride home is a blur of shock and tremors for Millie. She rocks back and forth, hugging herself, unable to process that she has killed a man, even if it was to save a life. She tries to reassure herself that Wendy's plan will work and the police will never know she was involved, but the weight of the act is heavy, compounded by the fact that this is not the first time she has taken a life. When she checks her phone, she finds multiple missed calls and voicemails from Brock, reminding her of their missed dinner and the crucial talk they were supposed to have. She calls him back and fabricates a story about a sudden, violent stomach bug to explain her absence. Brock's tone shifts from anger to concern, and he offers to come over with soup and comfort. Touched by his kindness but determined to keep him far away from the situation, Millie declines, insisting she needs to be alone to recover. After hanging up, she is racked with guilt for lying to her supportive boyfriend. She knows the only person she could confide in about the murder is Enzo, but contacting him feels like a dangerous step. Resolving to handle this alone, she heads home, clinging to the hope that this will all soon be behind her. Chapter 41. Millie wakes up after a restless, nightmare-filled night, her head pounding. The sound of someone persistently knocking at her door cuts through the pain. Peering through the peephole, she sees a man who identifies himself as Detective Ramirez of the NYPD. Her heart sinks, but she reasons it is logical they would want to question her about her employer's death. She opens the door a crack. Detective Ramirez informs her that Douglas Garrick was murdered and asks if she will come to the station to answer questions. His tone and the formal request make Millie uneasy. When he states that they will be having a talk one way or another, she feels a sickening dread and knows she needs a lawyer. She calls Brock, who is concerned, having believed her story about a stomach bug. She tells him Douglas was murdered and that the police want to interview her. Brock, a lawyer, immediately agrees to meet her at the station to represent her. As she gets the address, Millie realizes with grim irony that the serious conversation she has been avoiding with Brock is now inevitable, though under circumstances far worse than she ever imagined. Chapter 42. At the police station, a freaked-out Millie is relieved to see Brock waiting for her. Detective Ramirez places her alone in a small interrogation room. After a tense 40-minute wait, Brock enters, his expression troubled. He informs her that this is not a routine questioning, she is a serious suspect in Douglas's murder, and the police have a warrant to search her apartment at that very moment. Brock is baffled as to why she would be a suspect. Knowing he must be fully informed to represent her, Millie forces herself to reveal her secret. She tells him she has a prison record. When he asks for what, she confesses it was for murder, quickly clarifying it was in self-defense to protect a friend when she was a teenager. Brock is visibly shocked and disbelieves that a self-defense case would result in a prison sentence. He connects this revelation to her delayed college education, which he had previously attributed to her being a late bloomer. He is angry she did not tell him sooner, acknowledging he knew she was hiding something but never imagined it was this. After processing the shock, he tries to focus on the current case, asking why the police suspect her. Millie, unable to confess the truth about the shooting, sticks to her alibi that she left the penthouse early because she was sick and that Douglas was not there when she left. Brock, though shaken, attempts to reassure her, attributing the police's focus to her record and vowing to sort it out, though Millie lacks his confidence. Chapter 43. After a long, tense wait, Detective Ramirez begins the interrogation with Brock present. Ramirez's questions quickly take a shocking turn. He reveals that a burner phone was found in Douglas's possession, containing text messages that, with all the domestic details deleted, appear to be secretive planning for meetings. He then presents evidence found in Millie's apartment, the expensive, inscribed diamond bracelet from Wendy and the unreturned, costly designer dress from Douglas. Ramirez frames this as evidence of an affair, suggesting Millie was a jealous mistress. He then reveals they know she rented a motel room in Albany the night she stood Brock up. Millie is trapped, unable to explain the true reason for the trip without implicating Wendy. When she desperately insists Wendy will confirm her story, Ramirez delivers the final, devastating blow. He states that Wendy Garrick is the one who told them about the alleged affair, claiming Douglas was going to end it and that Millie shot him in a rage. To seal the case, he reveals that Millie's fingerprints are on the murder weapon. The interrogation room walls close in as Millie realizes Wendy has meticulously framed her for the murder. Chapter 44. After Detective Ramirez leaves the room, a tense silence falls between Millie and Brock. Brock, who has been silent throughout the latter part of the interrogation, is visibly seething. He confronts Millie, expressing his disbelief and anger over the revelations of her prison record and the mounting evidence of an alleged affair. He points out the damning coincidences of her absences and the motel night, and how it all looks from his perspective. Millie desperately tries to explain that she was helping Wendy escape an abusive situation, but Brock finds this impossible to believe, especially since Wendy is the one accusing her. When he directly asks if she killed Douglas Gerrick, Millie cannot bring herself to deny the core fact. Her hesitation and inability to outright deny it confirm his worst fears. Brock states he can no longer represent her as her lawyer, declaring it inappropriate. When Millie plays that she has no money for another attorney, he coldly suggests she use a public defender. He then confirms he is ending their relationship, stating he no longer knows who she is and expressing his devastation over the shattered future he had imagined for them. As the interrogation room door closes behind him, Millie is left completely alone and breaks down in tears. Chapter 45. Miraculously, Detective Ramirez does not arrest Millie, releasing her with a warning not to leave town. With no one else to call, she considers contacting Enzo but resists, not wanting to backtrack on her declaration of independence. She tries calling Wendy for an explanation but gets no answer. Returning to her Bronx apartment, she is immediately confronted by her landlady, Mrs. Randall, who is furious about the police search and gives Millie 1 week's notice to move out. Exhausted and defeated, Millie enters her ransacked apartment. She turns on the television, where the news is dominated by the story of Douglas Gerrick's murder. A segment features Wendy giving a tearful, emotional interview, describing Douglas as a kind, brilliant man and a loving husband, a portrayal that shocks Millie given the abuse she witnessed. The news then shows a photograph of the victim, Douglas Gerrick, the CEO of Coinstock. As Millie stares at the screen, a horrifying realization dawns on her. The man in the photograph is a complete stranger. He bears a vague resemblance but is definitively not the man she knew as Douglas Gerrick and shot in the penthouse. The chapter ends with the chilling question, if the man on the screen is the real Douglas Gerrick, then who did she kill? Part 2. Chapter 46. The narrative shifts to Wendy Gerrick's perspective. She acknowledges you may think her as a terrible person but stating she does not care. She reveals that the real Douglas Gerrick was a terrible husband who humiliated her, but she claims his murder was his own fault and that Millie is a necessary casualty. The chapter then flashes back 4 years to Wendy's first meeting with Douglas at a contemporary art gallery. She had studied his photo beforehand and deliberately sought him out. She finds the art preposterous but feigns interest. Douglas approaches her, and she is struck by his disheveled, unassuming appearance, which belies his immense wealth. They bond over their shared skepticism of the art. Wendy's internal thoughts reveal her calculated intent to seduce him, noting his lack of vanity about his weight and finding him far easier to manipulate than she had anticipated. This meeting sets the stage for their relationship, framed by Wendy's cold, manipulative objective from the very beginning. Chapter 47. 3 years before the present day, Wendy is frustrated with Douglas, who is disorganized, unkempt, and resistant to the social obligations she deems important, like a party at Leland Jasper's house. She sees his behavior as a form of sadistic torment, though he appears genuinely clueless. Her internal monologue reveals her focus on appearances and her desire to be seen as the elegant wife of a wealthy, powerful man. As Douglas prepares to meet his lawyer, Joe Bendeck, Wendy eavesdrops on their conversation. Joe pressures Douglas to have Wendy sign a prenuptial agreement before their wedding, arguing it is essential to protect his wealth. Douglas is initially reluctant, feeling it starts the marriage on the wrong foot, but Joe insists, stating that any woman who truly loved him would not object. After a moment of hesitation, Douglas capitulates and agrees to get it done, a decision Wendy overhears with clear significance for her future plans. Chapter 48. Wendy, Douglas, and his lawyer Joe Bendeck are in the living room reviewing the prenuptial agreement. Joe emphasizes that the terms are extremely generous, offering Wendy $10 million in the event of a divorce but preventing her from claiming any other assets. Wendy initially resists, performing a display of hurt feelings and questioning Douglas's trust in her. She dabs her eyes with a handkerchief, a tactic Joe sees through and dismisses as crap. Douglas, however, is swayed by her tears. He reassures her of his love and trust but remains firm, stating he cannot marry her without the prenup. Seeing that his resolve is unshakable, Wendy quickly assesses the situation. She internally acknowledges that $10 million is a substantial sum, even if it is not half of Douglas's wealth. With the pragmatic understanding that the marriage might not last, she outwardly capitulates and agrees to sign the document. Chapter 49. 2 years before the present, Wendy and Douglas are viewing a penthouse apartment with their realtor, Tammy. Douglas is resistant, arguing that their current city apartment and their house on Long Island are sufficient. He is portrayed as frugal and uncomfortable with extravagance, a result of his modest upbringing. Wendy, in contrast, is determined to live a life of luxury, driven by her own childhood of poverty. She manipulates Douglas by telling him the penthouse is her dream and, most effectively, by mentioning how useful it would be for their future children when they visit the city. This appeal to his desire for a family softens his resolve. Douglas reluctantly agrees to purchase the extravagant penthouse, rationalizing it as a potential tax write-off. As Wendy kisses him, she notes internally that he has gained weight and remains a work in progress, reflecting her ongoing dissatisfaction and her view of him as a project rather than a partner. Chapter 50. Wendy is having lunch with her friend Audrey, relishing the luxurious lifestyle her marriage affords. Audrey shares a piece of intriguing gossip about a woman named Millie, who is known as a cleaner but has a secret reputation for helping women in abusive marriages. Audrey explains that Millie provides resources, finds lawyers, and has even helped some women disappear. She then reveals the most shocking detail: in extreme cases, she has heard that Millie took the guy out, implying she has killed abusive men, and that she previously went to prison for killing a man who was assaulting her friend. The conversation then turns to Wendy's personal life. Audrey notes that Wendy isn't eating and probes about her attempts to have a baby with Douglas. Wendy admits they have been trying for a year without success. Audrey pressures her to see a fertility specialist, and though Wendy reluctantly takes the doctor's number, she internally resolves not to call, planning only to use it as a pretense to placate Douglas. The chapter establishes Millie's formidable reputation and hints at Wendy's fertility struggles as a point of tension in her marriage. Chapter 51. 1 year before the present, a scene at the Long Island home highlights the deep incompatibility between Wendy and Douglas. Wendy has prepared a dinner of a plain, fat-free salad, part of her relentless focus on maintaining a thin figure. Douglas is appalled by the meager meal and expresses concern about Wendy's health, noting she passed out after a run and barely eats. He suggests her extreme thinness might be affecting her fertility, which Wendy interprets as blaming her for their inability to conceive. The conversation escalates into an argument about their efforts to have a child. Douglas apologizes but finds the salad inedible. He gives up and announces he is going to get KFC, even inviting her to join him for a nostalgic, unhealthy meal like they sometimes had while dating. Wendy is horrified by the suggestion, seeing it as a regression. As Douglas leaves to get fast food, Wendy has a moment of stark realization. She decides she can no longer be faithful to him because she has lost all respect for him. This marks a critical turning point in her feelings toward her husband. Chapter 52. Feeling her marriage is falling apart, Wendy seeks solace in retail therapy, specifically by replacing Douglas's cheap, discount store furniture in their penthouse with expensive antiques. As she leaves the building, she runs into Marybeth Simons, a receptionist from Douglas's company. Marybeth is there to drop off documents and, in a friendly but overly familiar manner, asks for Douglas by his first name Doug. Marybeth, trying to be helpful, recommends her husband's furniture store and gives Wendy a business card. Wendy is taken aback by Marybeth's informal tone and the presumption of friendship. As Marybeth turns to leave, Wendy coldly corrects her, insisting she be addressed as Mrs. Garrick since they are not friends and she is the boss's wife. Marybeth struggles to maintain her pleasant demeanor as she apologizes and uses the formal address. The encounter highlights Wendy's growing sense of entitlement and her need to enforce the social hierarchy she believes her wealth warrants. Chapter 53. Wendy visits the furniture store owned by Russell Simons, the husband of Douglas's receptionist, Marybeth. She is immediately impressed by the quality of the restored vintage furniture, particularly a beautiful oak dresser. She is even more captivated by Russell himself. He bears a physical resemblance to Douglas but is everything she wishes her husband were, well-groomed, dressed impeccably, and professionally accomplished in a way that aligns with her aesthetic tastes. They share a flirtatious exchange, with Wendy stating that when she wants something, she will do whatever it takes to get it. Russell is clearly intrigued. Wendy proceeds to buy a large amount of furniture. As he rings up her purchases, he gives her his business card with his personal number written on the back, ostensibly for any problems with the furniture. Wendy takes the card, and her internal monologue reveals her intent. She sees Russell as another object of desire in his store and, true to her word, is determined to have him. Chapter 54. 6 months before the present, Wendy is deeply in love with her lover, Russell Simons. She reflects on her failed attempts to change Douglas into the man she wanted and contrasts him with Russell, who is everything she desires, handsome, well-groomed, physically fit, and passionate. Their affair has become more reckless, and they now often meet at the penthouse. During an expensive lunch, they make plans to meet again that evening. When the bill comes, Wendy's Platinum and Visa cards are both declined, causing embarrassment. Russell, though he cannot easily afford such a restaurant, pays with his own card. Wendy is baffled and concerned by the sudden financial issue, as she has never had to think about money before. She resolves to speak to Douglas about it that night, unaware that this could be a sign of a larger problem. Chapter 55. Wendy confronts Douglas at their Long Island home after discovering her credit cards have been cancelled. Douglas reveals he knows about her affair with Russell Simons, having discovered it through credit card charges and hidden cameras in their penthouse. He is furious and hurt, especially by her betrayal of Marybeth, whom he considers family. Wendy, seeing this as her chance for freedom, admits she never wanted children and reveals she has known for years that she is infertile due to a past infection. Douglas is devastated by this second lie. He then delivers a crushing blow. He reminds her of their prenuptial agreement, which he deliberately designed with a clause stating she would receive nothing in a divorce if there was evidence of infidelity. He has photos and videos from the hidden cameras to prove her adultery. Wendy is enraged, feeling tricked and cornered. Douglas informs her he is cutting off all her financial access. He tells her she can stay in the penthouse for now, but he plans to sell it. As he leaves the room, Wendy is consumed by a new, violent hatred. She realizes that if Douglas divorces her, she gets nothing, but if he dies, according to his will, she inherits everything. The idea of killing him becomes incredibly appealing. Chapter 56. 4 months before the present, Wendy lies in bed with Russell, despairing over Douglas's threats to sell the penthouse and leave her penniless due to the infidelity clause in the prenup. Russell suggests they divorce their spouses and live together on his income, but Wendy finds the idea of a middle-class life unacceptable. She openly wishes for Douglas's death, noting he takes heart medication, but Russell dismisses this as an unreliable plan. As Wendy fumes about Douglas's sadistic and abusive behavior in cutting off her money and home, she remembers the gossip from her friend Audrey about a cleaner named Millie. Audrey described Millie as a dangerous advocate for abused women who would do pretty much anything to stop a man from hurting a woman, even killing them. Wendy realizes that while Douglas is not physically abusive, she could frame the situation as emotional and financial abuse. A sinister plan begins to form in her mind. She considers manipulating Millie by making her believe a man, not the real Douglas, but a stand-in, is physically abusing her. If the abuse Millie witnesses is severe enough, Wendy believes Millie will be motivated to intervene violently, and Wendy won't have to stop her. This sets the stage for her elaborate scheme to use Millie as an unwitting weapon. Chapter 57. A few weeks before the present, Wendy is perfecting her disguise as an abused wife. Using makeup, she has created a masterful array of realistic-looking bruises on her face. Russell is impressed, but Wendy insists it needs one more element to be utterly convincing, a real, split lip that makeup cannot replicate. She demands that Russell punch her in the face. Russell is horrified and refuses, stating he has never hit a woman. Frustrated by his reluctance and feeling the financial pressure of her dwindling secret funds, Wendy taunts him, calling him pathetic and a loser for being a struggling furniture salesman in his 40s. She pushes him until his anger overrides his restraint, and he finally punches her, causing her nose to bleed profusely. Russell is immediately remorseful, but Wendy, though in pain, is thrilled. The bathroom is now a mess with her blood, including a bloody handprint on the sink, exactly the kind of visceral, undeniable evidence she needs to sell the illusion of severe abuse to Millie. She sees the violent scene not as a tragedy but as a perfect addition to her scheme. Chapter 58. On the night of the murder, Douglas arrives at the penthouse, looking tired and disheveled, believing he is there for Wendy to finally sign the divorce papers. Wendy expects Russell to emerge from the kitchen and shoot him immediately, but Russell is having a panic attack and refuses to go through with the murder. Furious, Wendy takes matters into her own hands. She puts on rubber gloves, pours Douglas a glass of water to leave Millie's fingerprints, and conceals the gun in her cardigan pocket. In the living room, Douglas unexpectedly offers a reconciliation, suggesting they give away most of his wealth to charity and live a simpler life together. This proposal horrifies Wendy and solidifies her resolve. She sees his desire to relinquish their fortune as a fundamental betrayal and an unforgivable misunderstanding of her needs. She pulls out the gun. Douglas, resigned, asks if she ever loved him. Wendy avoids answering and, with a steady hand, shoots him in the chest. Russell emerges from the kitchen, shocked that she went through with it. Wendy coldly drops the gun, removes her gloves, and orders Russell to leave. She confidently tells him to watch as she pins the entire murder on Millie, revealing her absolute conviction in the success of her elaborate frame-up. Part 3. Chapter 59. Millie is reeling from the news report showing a photograph of the real Douglas Garrick, a man she does not recognize. She compares the image online to the man she knew in the penthouse and is now certain they are two different people. This revelation throws everything into question, making her doubt her own sanity and the narrative the police are constructing. Feeling utterly alone after Brock abandoned her, she realizes Enzo is the only person who might believe her. Swallowing her pride, she calls him. He answers immediately, already aware of the news about her boss's death. When she admits she is in big trouble and asks if he can come over, he agrees without hesitation, stating he will be there in 5 minutes. Chapter 60. Enzo arrives at Millie's apartment within minutes. She confesses that her relationship with Brock is over. She then explains her terrifying realization: the man she knew as Douglas Garrick is not the man shown on the news as the murder victim. Enzo reveals his own research, noting the Garrick's primary residence is a mansion on Long Island, not the penthouse, which supports Millie's theory that the couple in the penthouse were imposters. When Millie confesses she shot the man she thought was Douglas, Enzo provides a crucial perspective. He questions whether the man was actually killed, pointing out she did not check for a pulse and that the blood could have been faked. This idea transforms Millie's understanding of the event. She realizes Wendy meticulously tricked her into believing she had committed murder as part of an elaborate frame-up. Furious and determined, Millie wants to confront Wendy, but Enzo dissuades her, noting the media circus. He instead focuses on finding the imposter. Millie remembers seeing the fake Douglas enter an apartment building with a blonde woman. Enzo seizes on this lead, and they resolve to go there to find the man or the woman and uncover the truth, giving Millie her first real hope of proving her innocence. Chapter 61. As Enzo helps Millie clean her ransacked apartment, She makes a disturbing discovery: the police have taken the clothes she was wearing the night of the murder. This sends a fresh wave of panic through her, as she worries about potential microscopic evidence, though she remains hopeful Enzo's theory about faked blood is correct. Their conversation turns to Brock. Enzo questions what she saw in him, pointing out that a good guy would not have abandoned her in her time of need. Millie defends Brock, attributing his departure to her secrecy about her past, but Enzo counters that who she is defined by her character, not a single past mistake. He states that if Brock could not see her true self, he did not deserve her. Millie acknowledges her relationship with Brock lacked a deep connection, a realization that brings her a sense of clarity and closure. Seizing the moment, Enzo asks if he can kiss her now that she is single. Instead of the punch in the nose she jokingly threatens, she lets him kiss her, and the moment confirms what she has been suppressing for years: her feelings for Enzo are far deeper and more authentic than anything she ever felt for Brock. Chapter 62. Millie and Enzo begin their stakeout of the brownstone apartment building at 6 in the morning, wearing simple disguises of baseball caps and sunglasses. After 2 hours of watching the entrance with no sign of the mystery man or the blonde woman, Enzo gets them coffee and bagels. Millie is too anxious to eat. Their conversation briefly turns to their rekindled relationship from the previous night. Enzo expresses his regret at having to choose between her and his dying mother in Italy, and Millie admits she should have waited for him. This moment is interrupted when Millie spots the blonde woman from the memory exiting the brownstone. The woman crosses the street and enters the Dunkin' Donuts. Enzo, confident in his charm, decides to go inside and approach her directly to extract information, leaving a skeptical Millie outside with the bagels to watch and wait. Chapter 63. Growing impatient, Millie crosses the street and watches through the window as Enzo speaks with the blonde woman inside Dunkin' Donuts. For a moment, Millie is plagued by doubts about Enzo's trustworthiness, recalling his violent past and his mysterious return. She watches their intense, lengthy conversation with a mix of anxiety and jealousy. When Enzo and the woman finally exit, he is slightly annoyed she did not stay across the street but then reveals he has obtained crucial information. The woman is Mary Beth Simons, the assistant to the real Douglas Garrick and the wife of the man Millie has been searching for. Enzo shows Millie a LinkedIn photo on his phone, and she confirms the image is of the man she knew as Douglas. His real name is Russell Simons. Most importantly, Enzo reveals that, according to his wife, Russell is alive and has gone away on a business trip. The relief that she did not kill anyone is immense, but the threat of a murder charge remains. Enzo declares his next step is to find out more about Russell Simons, and when Millie asks how, he delivers his classic line, "He knows a guy." Chapter 64. Millie and Enzo go to his small, sparsely furnished studio apartment. Enzo explains he works for a landscaping company to pay the bills. He is waiting for a call from his contact to get information on Russell Simons. Millie is anxious to act, but Enzo cautions that they need concrete evidence to present to the police, such as a criminal record or fingerprint match. The call comes in. Enzo's contact reports that Russell has no prison record, which is a setback. However, he does provide the address of a second residence, a lake house a few hours north of the city, where Russell might be hiding. Millie immediately wants to go there to confront him, but Enzo advises against it, believing it could make the situation worse and that they need a more solid plan to convince the police. As they debate their next move, Millie's phone rings. It is Brock, a call that introduces an unexpected and potentially complicating factor. Chapter 65. Brock calls Millie to apologize for his unprofessional behavior at the police station. He then delivers a devastating warning: the police tested her clothing and found gunshot residue, and he believes they are now obtaining an arrest warrant for her. This news confirms her worst fears: the case against her is becoming a slam dunk. Panicked and feeling cornered, Millie tells Enzo she is determined to go to the lake house to confront Russell Simons. Enzo, fearing she will do something reckless that will seal her fate, physically stops her and destroys the address. He makes her promise not to go. Under duress, Millie lies and promises she will not leave. She prepares to go home, expecting to be arrested. She and Enzo share a heartfelt goodbye, and for the first time, she tells him she loves him, a sentiment he reciprocates. However, the chapter ends with a reveal of her deception. She has stolen Enzo's car keys from his apartment and has no intention of keeping her promise, planning to drive to the lake house alone. Part 4. Chapter 66. Wendy and Russell are at his cabin on the lake, celebrating their success with champagne. Wendy is ecstatic about her newfound wealth, though she notes Russell seems tense and has been mentioning his wife, Mary Beth, more frequently, which irritates her. She reflects that he was too cowardly to kill Douglas himself and that his reluctance has diminished her respect for him. As they finish the champagne, Wendy, wrapped in a towel, goes to the kitchen to get more wine. She finds a bottle of Pinot Noir but then stops abruptly. Her attention is caught by a disturbing detail. One of the cabin's windows is wide open, suggesting a potential breach in their secluded hideaway. Chapter 67. Wendy notices a window in the cabin is wide open, letting in the cold rain. She cannot remember if it was open when they arrived. She closes it, then returns to the bathroom with the wine. She finds Russell in the bathtub, crying over Douglas's murder. Wendy is unsympathetic, seeing Douglas's death as justified punishment for his treatment of her. She dismisses Russell's guilt, telling him to pull himself together. To distract him, she offers him more wine and joins him in the tub, suggesting they drink to forget what happened. Russell drinks his wine quickly, and Wendy follows suit, hoping the alcohol will numb their consciences and improve their moods. Chapter 68. Wendy and Russell continue to drink in the bathtub, the wine improving their moods. Wendy's phone rings, and it is Joe Bendeck, Douglas's lawyer and the executor of his estate. She answers, relishing the power she now holds over him. However, Joe delivers a devastating blow. Douglas changed his will last month, leaving his entire fortune to charity and cutting Wendy out completely. Joe states that Douglas specifically did not want her to have any of his money. Wendy is enraged and dizzy with shock. She threatens to fight the will, but Joe informs her she must vacate both the penthouse and the Long Island house as they are being sold. As she processes this catastrophic financial reversal, her phone rings again. The caller is the New York Police Department. Chapter 69. Detective Rodriguez calls Wendy. He informs her they have not been able to locate Millie to arrest her. He then delivers two devastating pieces of information. First, the building manager revealed there is a hidden security camera at the back entrance of the penthouse, installed by Douglas a year ago. The footage shows that the real Douglas Garrick had not entered the building in months, completely undermining the affair narrative. It also shows he arrived after Millie had already left on the night of the murder. Wendy realizes this evidence exonerates Millie and implicates her. Rodriguez asks her to come to the station to clarify these discrepancies and mentions a squad car is being sent to her house. Panicked, Wendy ends the call. She quickly formulates a new plan to claim self-defense against an abusive husband. She calls out to Russell to get their story straight, but when she enters the bathroom, she is met with a horrifying sight. The bathtub water is dyed deep crimson with blood. Russell is slumped in the tub with a gaping wound on his throat, his eyes open and unblinking, clearly dead. Chapter 70. Wendy finds Russell murdered in the bathtub, his throat slit. Realizing an intruder is in the cabin, she deduces it must be Millie, who has every reason to seek revenge. The power suddenly cuts, plunging the cabin into darkness. Wendy tries to plead with Millie, claiming she was a genuine victim of Douglas's abuse, but receives no response. Hearing glass shatter, Wendy abandons negotiation and makes a desperate dash for the kitchen to find a weapon. She slips in a pool of Russell's blood but scrambles to her feet. She frantically feels along the kitchen counter for the block of knives, but it is gone. Millie has anticipated this. As Wendy searches for another weapon, like a frying pan, she hears Millie's footsteps closing in behind her. She realizes with terror that Millie is now in the kitchen with her. Chapter 71. In the pitch-black kitchen, Wendy backs against the stove as the intruder's silhouette approaches, a knife glinting in their hand. Desperate, Wendy tries to bargain, offering vast sums of money and promising to recount her story to the police to clear Millie's name. The figure remains silent and unmoved, continuing to advance. As Wendy begs for her life, a flash of lightning illuminates the room. In that split second, Wendy sees the face of the person holding the knife. The realization is a profound shock. The person standing before her, ready to kill her, is not Millie. Chapter 72. Wendy is shocked to see that her attacker is not Millie, but Mary Beth Simons, Russell's wife and Douglas's secretary. Mary Beth, covered in Russell's blood, forces Wendy to sit at the kitchen table. She reveals she knows about the 10-month affair and that Wendy and Russell killed Douglas, whom she considered a brother. Consumed by vengeance for both betrayals, Mary Beth dictates a forced confession for Wendy to write. The confession states that Wendy, overcome with guilt, has decided to take her own life and Russell's. After Wendy signs it, Mary Beth reveals her true plan. She has already poisoned Wendy by lacing the Pinot Noir with digoxin, the heart medication Douglas took. As Wendy collapses to the floor, seized by violent cramps and dizziness, Mary Beth coldly explains the agonizing symptoms of digoxin toxicity and that the poison will cause a fatal heart arrhythmia. She refuses any plea for mercy or to take Wendy to the hospital, vowing that her death will be slow and painful as punishment for her crimes. Chapter 73. Millie, having slept in Enzo's car to avoid arrest, returns to her apartment building to turn herself in. A police officer is waiting but informs her she is not under arrest. Detective Ramirez only wants to talk to her. As she rides in the police car, she turns on her phone and finds a stream of frantic missed calls and texts from Enzo, who discovered she took his car and was worried she went to the cabin. She texts him to assure him she is safe and in a police car. His immediate response is not anger or relief, but a shocking piece of news: Wendy Garrick is dead. He states he saw on the news that she killed herself. This revelation changes everything just as Millie is about to speak with the police. Chapter 74. Millie finds herself back in the police interrogation room, but her fear has been replaced by a sense of clarity. During the car ride, she consumed every available news story about Wendy Garrick's suicide, learning that Wendy slashed her boyfriend's throat, ingested pills, and left a note behind. This new information reshapes her understanding of Douglas Garrick's death. Detective Rodriguez enters, his previously stern demeanor now replaced by a look of confusion. He confirms the news about Wendy and reveals the crucial detail from her suicide note: a full confession to Garrick's murder. When Millie asks if she is no longer a suspect, Rodriguez explains that she was already cleared. An unknown camera at the building's back entrance provided video evidence proving Millie was never in the apartment at the same time as Douglas Garrick. Wendy had framed her. The proof of her innocence was there all along, rendering her recent panic unnecessary. Rodriguez offers an apology for his earlier assumptions, acknowledging that Millie's record and Wendy's insistence made her a convenient target. Millie reflects inwardly that Wendy's elaborate setup was ultimately self-defeating. The entire experience has left Millie disillusioned. Wendy presented herself as a genuine victim, and this betrayal makes Millie wary of trusting future pleas for help, a resentment she holds against Wendy. With the case closed, Millie questions why she was brought in. Rodriguez explains that through the investigation, her reputation has emerged not as a criminal, but as a hero for the women she has helped. He expresses appreciation for her efforts, admitting the police often arrive too late for victims. He offers himself as a resource, handing her a business card with his personal cell number and a promise to believe her in the future. Millie confirms he is not flirting, and he mentions her Italian friend, Enzo, who caused a fuss at the station defending her and is now waiting insistently in the lobby. Millie smiles, shakes the detective's hand, and heads out to meet Enzo, finally free to go home. Epilogue. 3 months later, Millie's apartment is filled with boxes as Enzo completes his move into her home. She watches him carry in another load, musing that he seems to own an impossible amount of belongings for a man with a simple wardrobe. She briefly feigns regret about their decision to live together, but internally acknowledges that their relationship feels completely right. She recalls that it was Enzo's charm that convinced their landlord, Mrs. Randall, to let Millie stay in the apartment even after her exoneration. As Enzo leaves to retrieve the final 2 boxes, the door buzzer rings. Millie answers, expecting it to be Enzo, but instead finds her ex-boyfriend, Brock, impeccably dressed and waiting at her door. She hands him a box of his leftover belongings she discovered while clearing space for Enzo. They exchange brief, somewhat awkward pleasantries. Brock comments that she looks good and reveals he is not seeing anyone special. He does not ask about her life, sparing her from mentioning that Enzo is moving in. As he prepares to leave, Brock stops to ask if she found an extra bottle of his heart medication, digoxin, in the medicine cabinet. Millie calmly tells him she must have thrown it out, and he dismisses the concern, more relieved about his Yale hoodie. After Brock leaves, Millie reveals the truth. She had indeed found that bottle of digoxin long ago and researched its properties, learning that a large dose could be fatal. She discloses that the pills Wendy Garrick used to overdose did not come from her husband Douglas's supply, as the police believed. On the day she took Enzo's car keys, Millie did not drive to the cabin. Instead, she drove to Manhattan and visited Mary Beth Simons, the wife of Russell Simons, who was an employee of the real Douglas Garrick. Millie told Mary Beth everything she knew about Russell's activities. After learning this and recalling a large life insurance policy, Mary Beth decided to take a therapeutic drive to the cabin herself. Millie concludes by reflecting that Wendy Garrick made a fatal error in judgment by underestimating a dangerous person, and she paid the ultimate price for that mistake. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this book summary, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more summaries. Do you have any thoughts or questions? Drop them in the comments below.